अपार सच्चित् सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि। After a general introduction to Saddarshanam, during which we also said a few things about the life of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, we took up the first verse of this great work, and summarily, that first verse pays a tribute to Nirguna Nirakara Satya, calling it Sat, calling it Hrit also, heart, Hridakyam. It was suggested that meditation on the highest reality as it is not any form of visualizing it, but meditation on that level is being one's own true self. Tasya smritihi tatra dridhaiva nishtha. It's a powerful statement, for in general our life is full of wanting to become, wanting to go, wanting to reach, wanting to control something, wanting to let go something. There is always point A and point B. We are at point A, we want to go to point B. In contrast, this out-of-box suggestion says just be. As you know, when people asked Maharshi Ramana for a very brief summary of all sadhana, he said, Summa be still, which Arunagiri Nada had said centuries before. Be still. However, this message, be still, is not easy to understand. We look at it on the surface and we just shut our mouth. Mind will be very noisy. Or we conceptualize that also. Therefore, even Maharshi advised that we study the Vedanta to a certain extent. Be clear about some terminology. In the name of only practice, Maharshi never said completely avoid the Shastras. He said, do not get lost in the labyrinth of Shastras, the jungle of Shastras. But he did translate Atmabodha, Viveka Chudamani, Dakshinamurti Stotra, and a few other works into Tamil. Why did he do that? He was keen that students do not get their own meaning, do not interpret some of his lofty teachings in some way convenient to them. For example, this Summairu is not to be taken as verbal silence, not even suppressing thoughts, but really it is to be free of the slightest movement of the ego. That is where, to make a passing comment, I will not go more into it. After being very inspired by Ramana Maharshi for some years, I went to J. Krishnamurti, and what made me go to Krishnamurti was I noticed that J. Krishnamurti said a few things which, in a way, brought some clarity to what Bhagavan had said in a different way. This nishtha, to be. J. Krishnamurti spoke elaborately, extensively about staying alert, staying as a witness. Of course, he used the words a bit differently. Watch the movement of the self, he said. For him, the self is not the pure self of Vedanta. The self is this little I, ego. For good reasons, he avoided the word ego. The self is the center, he said, that gets elated. When somebody praises you, you feel good. Right? And when somebody criticizes you, something in you is uncomfortable. Something in you gets hurt. And that center, let us call it a center within us, which feels good when praised, which feels hurt when criticized, is the little self. And just watch that self, watch how the self rises or falls or comes out with a new scheme, with a new aspiration, a new hope, and so on, was the gist of Krishnamurti's teachings. Tatra dridhaiva nishtha has a strong resemblance to that kind of staying attentive. Krishnamurti might have said many other things. He might have, in a certain context, criticized gurus, and in his organization, certain ways, certain customs might have developed. All of them are not to be mixed with this essential teaching. Therefore, moving on, we may make one more comment. In those days, in the second half of the last century, many thinkers had put three luminaries somewhat together. Maharshi Ramana, Nisargadatta Maharaj, and they gave J. Krishnamurti also a place of honor. Ganeshan, the grandson of Maharshi Ramana, had and has great regard for J. Krishnamurti. He spent quite some time in Krishnamurti Center in Varanasi. He had met Nisargadatta also. Not that we take Ganeshan or anybody as the final authority. However, we wonder what made them go to Krishnamurti of all people. And people wonder why someone like Swāmi Chidānandaji, after studying Shankara's commentaries and after enjoying the teachings of Maharshi Ramana, went there. It is on certain aspects of Krishnamurti's teachings. Otherwise, there are a lot of differences, and it's a very vast subject. So, let me openly say, we don't have to agree with everything J. Krishnamurti had said. Sometimes we do not even know why he said something. Before you agree with somebody, you should know in what context he said and why he said. We have no idea. Therefore, it's better to just be quiet on those topics. But we are reflecting on what it is to stay in one's own true nature. Tatra. Tatra means our true nature. Our simplest being. What is simplest being? To be as a man or as a woman, to be as a professional, as a mother of two children, as a brother of two sisters. This is all qualified being. That's a technical word, qualified. Here the word qualify means being or existence is given a quality, given a description. If I say this table is, easiness is pure. But once you called it a table, you have qualified it. Once you attach some characteristics, then we call it qualified. That is the sense. The first verse talks about Nirguna Nirakara, with no attributes, Nirguna, and Nirakara, no form, no description. And when you reflect on this Tatra Dridhaiva Nishta, it poses a mighty challenge before you. What is that challenge? In a manner of saying, for heaven's sake, for a minute, for 30 seconds, can you just be and not be mother or father, sister or... We are unable to generally do that. I added generally because we eminently succeed in just being, not being this or that, just being when we go to sleep. In deep sleep, next time you see somebody deep asleep, go and ask him, tell me what are you? He doesn't answer. And in a manner of saying, he at that moment is not looking at himself as a man or woman, but he is. A Sat remains in deep, dreamless sleep. Therefore, according to a certain school of Vedanta, that very same school which morning I referred to, considers erroneous seeing itself as avidya, itself is adhyasa, asamyak darshana. That school also believes, or what believes, it states that in sushupti, deep sleep, every one of us is the pure self. No avidya, no vasana, no karana sharira. It's a mind-blowing outlook. We mentioned deep sleep now in a passing manner. Is there any time at all when we don't describe ourselves? And I said with some touch of humor, yes, in deep sleep. So even when a lecture is going on, when you try to understand what the speaker is saying, when you struggle with that, and when you ask, so does it mean that really I am not any of these, what I normally take myself to be, man or woman, etc.? Is that so? Oh my, this is difficult. I would rather imagine a lot of I comes. And then sometimes in a Vedanta class, delivered by a good scholar, you can't anymore deliberate on what the speaker is saying. And you doze off. That is when Tatra Dradaiva Nishta happens. For a few seconds, you don't even look at yourself as a Vedanta student or a spiritual seeker or a mother of so-and-so, brother of so-and-so. Neither Swami Tanmayananda nor Swami Chidānandaji. Even suppose there is a short spell of deep sleep. Even we do not think ourselves as Swamis that everything, Mahatyaga it is. In deep sleep, there is a renunciation of a great order where you renounce all identity. Therefore, not just for humor, but seriously, Sushupti is something to be pondered by all of us in this waking state. What actually is Sushupti? Sushupti will come later in some shlokas. Nidra na vidya, grahanam na vidya, there is a shloka. So it should suffice to say at this moment, the first shloka gave to us some food for thought about our unqualified existence. While ordinarily thoughts make us again and again get stuck in qualified existence. We exist with some description. Like I told in the morning, my student, after studying Atmajnana for many years, sits and asks, who am I? I am Vishalakshi's husband, is the answer. That is qualified. Any description is qualified. Qualification in this is not MA or BA, that is another context. Here, qualification means you describe yourself in some form, in gross or subtle ways. Subtle way meaning, all said and done, I am a failure in life. Judgment. So we will talk a lot about this. And this is a beautiful connection between psychology and spirituality. It is our psychology which makes every one of us describe ourselves in various ways. And then that decides behavior. So one of the definitions of psychology is the study of man's behavior. Psychology is not defined as study of the mind. Psychology is a study of behavior. If somebody behaves with some sense of superiority, he or she has thoughts which are constantly describing, rightly or wrongly, that he is superior to others, she is above others. It's a self-description. Now we go to the second shloka. Lord Shiva, who is also called Mrityunjaya, conqueror of death, is indirectly praised. It's not a direct praise saying, oh Shiva, I bow down before you. Lot of stutis are direct praise. Varanasi Purapatim Bhaja Vishwanatham or Chandrasekhara Mashraye Mama Kim Karishyati Vayyamaha. I take refuge in Shiva. So that is pretty much direct praise. Here again, self-inquiry is brought in. But this touch of devotion, let's sing this second shloka. Mrityunjayam mrityubhyashritanam aham matir mrityumupaiti purvam atha svabhavad amriteshu teshu katham punar mrityu dhiyo akashaha. There is no mention of self-inquiry directly here. This is the path of surrender. And if we call the first verse one that went about Nirguna Nirakara, the second verse goes about Saguna Sakara. Sakara means Akara, a form. Lord Shiva has a form with matted locks, Jata-Juta, with Ganga upon his head, with a moon, crescent moon. So much description is not given here. But by calling him Mrityunjaya, anyone familiar with Hindu gods would bring to their minds Shiva, the conqueror of death. The story of Markandeya will come to the mind of all of us, where Shiva drove away Yama. Yama is Mrityu. Yama was all set to take the pranas of Markandeya. Shiva chased Yama, Mrityu away and blessed the 16-year-old boy Markandeya with eternal life. No death. Mrityu was conquered. That's just an example. Shiva all the time is blessing people in various ways. This Ganapati Muni's poetic construction is not only brief, but has great poetic qualities. Brief and yet very elegant. I do not know Alankara Shastra so much, but there is a whole branch of literature called Alankara Shastra. People study, those who do MA, PhD in Sanskrit, Tamil, Hindi, or Kannada, or any language. Alankara is those very many ways in which something is said in a very charming way. I believe a father who was good in Sanskrit was going with two boys, and he was training both his sons in poetry, teaching them the nuances of poetry to illustrate what is elegance in writing. And as they were going with father and two sons, there was a dry tree by the side, and there was a serpent upon it. A very interesting sight. Of course, they kept a good distance. The snake should not jump on them. But the father, being an accomplished poet, said to the sons, "Okay, a little work for you. Describe this scene with a little poetic touch." Of the two sons, the older one, though he was son of a poet, somehow did not have a leaning towards poetry. He just said, "Shushka vrikshosti, tadupari sarposti." What poetry is that? Describing in simple prose, but putting a tone to it. So the father smiled and then asked the second son, "Describe this." a dry tree upon which there is a snake. And the second boy has this alankara, how to make something beautiful. Master of words. The second boy said, Nīrasa taruriha rājati purata tadupari rājati fanipati rāja. Nīrasa. Instead of saying shushka, shushka also means, in Hindi they say sukha, dry. Shushka also means dry. But he uses the word nīrasa. Taru. Nīrasa has ra, taru has ra. Nīrasa taru riha rājati shines purataha, in front of me. Several times that ra or ru comes. And tadupari again ra, rājati, rather than saying asti. Asti is a very simple word. But rājati shines. There shines the snake. And rather than just calling sarpa, it says fanipati raja. So that is alankara. Will not go more into sahitya, but as a passing remark, mrityunjayam mrityubhya ashritana. To such people who out of mrityu bhi means bhayam, out of fear of death, like Markandeya himself, Yama has come. Markandeya prays to Lord Shiva. Chandrasekharam ashraye, I take refuge in Shiva. He says, Mrityu bhaya bhiya, bhi is fear. Mrityu bhitya, mrityu bhayena, ashritanam. In whom did they take shelter? In Shiva. Mrityunjayam ashritanam. Now comes a beautiful dimension. In that process of completely surrendering to God, Shiva here, something happens which is very interesting. They are fully with God, lovingly thinking of God, trusting God, having full faith in God. In the process, all their ideas of who they were, who they are, who they will be, thoughts, they die. Ahammati. And Ganapati Muni brings for the third time the word mrityu. Ahammati mrityum upaiti. Ego dies, their ego dies. So, Bhakti Marga also achieves the same goal as Jnana Marga, but a little indirectly. Think of God, dance in love of God, be filled with God. Then, without even your knowing, your memories, your thoughts about where you lost, where you made a fool of yourself, where people laughed at you, where your own near and dear ones left you and went, where you are rejected by the society, etc. Those are the things which bother us sometimes. When a memory arises of somebody who was very close to us and on some flimsy ground, she or he left us. Even after many years, it gives us some pain. And who among us does not go through that kind of separation? Life is full of coming together and separation. Everybody's life. You people think that Swamis do not have any such problem. Swamis have all the problems that you people have. In your case, it may be wife, husband, son, daughter, niece, nephew, cousin, etc. Yeah, we did not marry, we became Swamis, but we have also a samsara. Sometimes a bigger samsara than youth. So-called students, so-called disciples, so-called gurus, so-called guides, so-called so many relationships, committee members, management people, and those who organize our programs, those who host us, those who take us from point A to point B. Life is full of relationships. And we have similar issues. It's not a son or daughter who has left and gone, but it could be a student who was with us maybe for 25 years. Lot of memories. A lady or a man, boy, girl, whoever. So good she was to me. And I helped her, I helped him. And I did that for him, he did that for me, isn't it? And I'm not digressing. You know what the ego is? The ego is nothing but the summation of such memories. So even as I sit asking, who am I get the thought, well, I am that unfortunate Vedanta teacher whom that Devadatta, such a wonderful student, simply dumped overnight and went away to Himalayas. I spent so much of time and energy upon Devadatta, and I was hoping that I would make Devadatta my successor of my ashram, some Devadatta. I had done everything, prepared the ground. But Devadatta one morning said, I am going. And thank you for everything you have done for me. I do not want to be with you anymore. Sorry if I am hurting you, blah, blah. I only taught him all those tricks of the trade to whitewash. He's leaving me, but speaking beautiful words. I apologize for hurting you if I did. I only taught all those niceties. And he is giving me back in the same coin. And so he went. And I stood at the gate of my ashram. Right? So, memories of such separation, loss, and many things come to every one of us. Swāmi Chidānandaji said at one time, what is ego? It is nothing but a bundle of memories. A bundle of memories. Now, in the second shloka, aham matihi mrityum upaiti. The sense of I dies. Ego dies. In other words, it's not a literal erasure of memory. Literal erasure of memory can be done through some surgery. Brain, they know modern neurology. If you ask someone like Dr. Timmappa Hegde, he will tell this part of the brain has memories of one kind, this part of the memory. So various memories, other functions are all. So if that portion of the brain is knocked off, though our Adhyatma Vidya says subtle body will have everything. This is after all a backup copy. Or this is the copy. Subtle body carries. But it's not the literal erasure of memory. Why blame memories? Blame memories, let them be there. But memories rising without our permission. Memories rising at the wrong time and not rising at the right time. When required, you don't remember. When you don't require, you remember. Right? That is a tragedy. The ego is when memories rise and torture us. In 1988, I was eager to see Paramacharya. So I was in Bangalore, working somewhere, and a colleague of mine, both of us said, let us go to Kanchi. So two Kannadigas boarded some bus, went to Kanchi, stayed in some hotel room and inquired how to meet Periyava. They said morning 3:30 you have to come. Okay, we got up, took bath and went at 4 a.m. had darshan of Paramacharya. It was another wonderful episode. And later on we went to have darshan of Kanchi Kamakshi. And when we went, there was some grill or something. Maybe they opened my vague memories, some kind of grill, and through that we could have darshan. So I also stood there with the hands folded. My colleague in the college where I was teaching those days in Bangalore, he also stood. And in 2 minutes, I noticed my colleague was crying, weeping. And let me tell you frankly, I felt very envious of him because I did not have any such sentiments. I have said, Amma, please protect me, give me Viveka, Vairagya, or whatever, some prayer. And I saw he's crying. I said, I am the one who studied for 2 years in Adipati Sadhanalaya and have come back and taken the job. With all that exposure to Vedanta, I didn't have a single drop of tear. Stone-hearted I am. Or maybe I am still very worldly. This person, my colleague, whom I thought he doesn't know any Adhyatma, is crying. So I was envious, I was jealous, but I felt low that I am not the right person. He is a true devotee. Now comes the anticlimax. After we came out of the temple, I asked him, how come you felt so emotional? You felt so emotional about Devi Kamakshi. He belonged to this Shaiva community, Lingayat. So I thought he is a Shiva Bhakta. V-2 are smartas, but he is a Shiva Bhakta. Maybe this is Mother Parvati. Maybe he has some special equation. Nothing. The anticlimax is this colleague of mine said to me, no, it was not bhakti to Mother. It was nothing to do with Mother Kamakshi. Then why did you cry? He said, holding the bars of that grill, even as I looked at Kamakshi, I remembered all the fight I had with my wife in last 2 or 3 months. How she said this, then how I said this, and then how she said that, and how I defended. Then my mother came into picture, that my wife got angry with my mother. Then all those came, and the kind of quarrel that takes place at my home, all pictures came. And I felt my life is such a waste. That is called ahammati. In the medium of memories. Swāmi Chidānandaji therefore said, ego is nothing but a bundle of memories. So I said, that, so you didn't have devotion to... No, she triggered that beautifully decorated Kamakshi. I looked at her face, her eyes. It triggered something in me. Then, what is that? In movies, there is no flashback or something. Flashback, 3 months, 2 months, 1 month back. All the quarrel in detail. That is not the time for him to remember those fights. But then I felt a little better. Okay, I am not so bad. So it is not devotion and no devotion. It is, he was flooded with memories. So, leave aside all that dramatization. Who among us is free from memories gushing in? And in the medium of memories, the ego gets formed. Think of it. Memories are the stuff of which ego is made. And Maharshi Ramana is saying so wonderfully, when there is surrender to God, all these memories take a back seat. As I already said, we don't have to literally erase the memory. All we need is, when we wish to remember, we should be able to remember. Somebody asks you, to which school did you go when you were in 6th standard? And but if you say, I went to such and such school in such and such town, and you remember even the headmaster's name, and you even remember a few things about the school, what is wrong with that? Or you passed in some exam, you failed in some other, you got a trophy for something, you lost in some other competition. Remembering the functional side of it has no issue in spirituality. But suppose when I was in 8th standard, I wanted to be the race champion and I did not come in first 3 places, and you say, you remember all that, again start crying. That crying is a problem. That means with the functional memory, there is a word for this now. There is a psychological memory. I would dare say that the ahammati is made of psychological memories. If you and I remember some unpleasant incident, that's not a problem. But if you relive that unpleasant episode, someone had insulted you in 2012 near the town hall in Bangalore, and you relive, and just as you went through agony, went through pain when he said those nasty words, suppose as you remember, now once more you go through that agony, once more you go through that pain, then your ego is up and active. Whereas you remember that and smile. Those days, praise and insult were so significant for me. Now, let people say anything they want. You smile at that episode where you were insulted. Then ahammati is absent. So it's not the literal erasure of memory, but memories do not anymore persecute you. And in bhakti that happens. Ahammati mrityum upaiti purvam. Purva means first. Oh, if you say first, the ego dies. What happens later? First this and later that. Later, their fear of death goes away. Who is to die? Katham punar mrityu diyaha avakashaha. 4th line. Mrityu dhihi. Here also there is an alankara. Earlier mrityu bhihi was used. Bhihi is fear. And mrityu dhihi is the thought. The thought of, I may die now. My life is coming to an end. Oh my, what is happening to me? These are thoughts. So mrityu dhihi and tasyaha, mrityu dhiyaha, katham avakasha, where is any scope? What is more, swabhavat, by nature, all of those who are afraid of death, and we too, are amrita, immortal. Swabhavat amritaha. Then why did they fear? They were away from their swabhava. Carried away, hijacked by thoughts, hijacked by psychological memories. They were erroneously seeing themselves as somebody subject to death. They are not. Nobody dies really. The body dies. No one dies. But all of us are so identified with the body. That is the asamyak darshan. Therefore, swabhavad amriteshu teshu janeshu teshu bhakteshu mrityu vicharasya katham avakashaha. In Sanskrit, avakasha has many meanings. In South Indian languages, the word avakasha is used, at least I know Kannada for sure, for scope, for chance, for an opportunity. Once I was speaking at a university in New Delhi in Hindi, and I said, मैं बहुत खुश हूँ आज आप सबके सामने बोलने का एक अवकाश मिला. That is, in North India, avakasha doesn't mean opportunity, doesn't mean chance. In North India, Avakash means chutti, holidays. School ka aajkal Avakash chal raha hai. In Maharashtra also mostly. Avakash. So later on that was recorded, and while transcribing, somebody corrected it. Mauka mila, you have to say, or Avsar, thank you. The editor put that Avsar mila. So, but that's not a matter of who is right. North India uses some words in certain meaning, which is also present in Sanskrit. South India takes some other meanings. So one has to be very careful what that word means. Here it is the way South Indians use. Avakash is chance. Room, my translation goes. How can there be room for any idea, possibility? Right? So, while the first verse was Nirguna Nirakara, second one is about Saguna Sakara, with attribute Shiva, with some form. Though details of the form are not given, but it's clearly a hint towards Lord Shiva, who is that supreme Ishvara Tattva in a specific form. With these two Mangala shlokas, with these two invocation verses, the curtain goes up for us to take a look at all the main 40 verses. That Napattu or Kannada Nalavattu begins now in what is numbered here, third. Let's read the third one. Sarvair Nidanam Jagato Hamascha Vachya Prabhu Kaschidapara Shakti Chitretra Lokyancha Vilokitacha Pata Prakasho Pyabhavatsa Ekaha. The third and the fourth shlokas, which one last time, are the first and second in the set of 40. Both talk about the threefold classification of the entire universe. That is, the universe is, on one hand, all of us, human beings, plants, animals, birds, and all creatures, they are called Jiva. On the other, it is Ishvara. And thirdly, the grand stage on which the play of life goes on, that is Jagat. In this verse, Maharshi Ramana says, Nidanam. Nidanam in Sanskrit means the cause, Karana. Jagataha Nidanam. Who caused this universe? Who brought this universe forward? Who created this universe? God. God created this universe. And your children or grandchildren will ask you, who created God? They are smart. And tradition has always answered it. God is Swayambhu. God is self-established. No one needs to create him. Because if you say some X created God, then the grandchildren won't stop there. Who created X? Y created X. Who created Y? Z created X. Who created Z? It goes on and on. Not to avoid that kind of endless succession, but with a philosophical insight, the rishis had said that there is a certain truth which is ever present, and in the Advaita Vedanta, it is said that this business of creation is for those who are unable to rise to higher philosophical levels. If you are able to go deeper and deeper, call it deeper or call it higher, you will realize that there is no creation actually. In Mandukya Upanishad and such places, and Maharshi Ramana was fully with that pinnacle of understanding where there is no creation at all, has a name, Ajata Vadam. They also call it Ajati Vadam. Jata and Jati both mean coming into being, rising. Universe came into being, we say. That is for Manda and Madhyama Adhikaris. Dull-witted people and middle-level people, you need to give a theory of creation. But for Uttama Adhikaris, who are able to see through a fundamental problem with all these theories, the answer given is nothing is created. Etat tad uttamam satyam yatra kinchit na jayate is a statement in the Mandukya Karikas of Gaudapada, Shankaracharya's Guru's Guru. We need not go into it at this moment. Sri Maharshi, out of great compassion, comes down a little bit to the level of Madhyama Adhikaris. Adhikari means candidate with certain eligibility. Candidates of medium capacity, the theory of creation is presented. God created. Jagataha Nidanam. Jagataha Karanam. God not only created this stage, the physical universe, but He also created the Jiva, individual souls. In this verse, the individual souls are referred to as Aham. Because every individual soul, whether you and I, human beings, or animals or birds or some insect, that being from its own point of view thinks in terms of I. I believe sage Vyasa was one day going towards a river for taking bath. And as he was going, there was a little worm on the path. That worm somehow felt or sensed some steps coming towards it. And the worm, which was moving, trying to cross the path, realizing somebody is coming, reversed its direction and was going. The Vyasa stood and said, oh my, even that little creature is fond of life. Nobody wants to die. Everyone wants to live. Vyasa started thinking from that worm's point of view. If you think from that worm's point of view, that krimi, that worm would be thinking, I am in danger now. Some heavy object is coming. I may die, mrityu bhi. I better run. And it runs. So every jiva, a little creature, a bacterium also, all of them are marked by having this sense of I. Therefore, aham. And since this I is used as a third person, the ego, the I. So, for those who know a little grammar, the word aham is used like a word ending in ma, and the sixth case becomes ahama. Otherwise, the sixth case of aham is mama, my house, mama graham, my son, mama putra. Right? But here, aham did not become mama, it became ahama. That is, some of you which you have learned, you have a word marut in Sanskrit. Marut, maruto, marutaha, marutam, marutam, marutaha. Sixth case is maruta. That is, let's say, the speed of this wind. Marutaha vegaha. Of. So this is characteristic of Ramana literature. In Upadesha Sara also, aham is used like In English also we do that. We put I, capital I in apostrophes, and we then treat that word not as a first person pronoun. If I is a first person pronoun, we say I go. But when the I with inverted commas on both sides is used as a third person pronoun, we say if I goes, if I disappears, if I dies. I stands for ego there. So aham is treated as a third person entity. Ahamaha nidanam, jagataha nidanam, vachyaha, sarvaihi vachyaha. The cause of the universe, the cause of individual souls is spoken of, vachyaha, is described by all, sarvaihi, meaning all the Astika philosophies. Nastikas don't talk about God. Buddhism, with all due respect to them, has no room for God. There is no God in Buddhism. There is no God in Jainism. And there is no God in, I guess, some other philosophies in the world. So we say, whatever, they do some good job for calming the mind. Today you have the so-called mindfulness spreading far and wide. Mindfulness workshops. It's a Buddhist practice, essentially. Vipassana, for that matter. So over there, no mention of God. Dalai Lama, again with all due respect to him, has made some statements in some of his speeches. I just laughed at them. After all, he comes from Buddhist background. He's a nice person. We had met my students and I had gone and met him. Very good human, very lovely, simple being. But they have no understanding of what Sanatana Dharma talks of as God. They are in their own system. So in some speeches, he makes what otherwise would be a disparaging statement. Buddhism does make disparaging statements. In one of his talks, he said, you suffer because of what you do. And you will be happy if you do good things. Where does God come into picture? There is no God here. He makes some gestures, but with childlike simplicity also. But whether he says it humorously or seriously, the statement can unsettle people. Therefore, having said it, when the Pope, not the present one of the older popes, previous popes came to India, and in Bombay or somewhere, the Pope made a statement. See, we Hindus have a certain inbuilt broad-mindedness. Anything and everything we say, okay, it's okay in a certain way, from an angle of view. So we sort of accommodate everything. Not so with the Catholic religion. So the Pope said in some big gathering in India, be careful about Buddhism who deny God. Any denial of God is very serious for Christianity, Islam, etc. If someone says there is no God, they take it very seriously. In Hinduism, we make Buddha the 10th avatar or 9th avatar. We are very accommodating. Now, that episode, some of you may know, this was many years ago, had great repercussions. When he said, keep away from Buddhism, which doesn't believe in God, it came in newspapers, television those days. From India, the Pope was going to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is a Buddhist country. And the Buddhists there, they reacted. And they even issued statements. We don't want the Pope to come to our country who has made a disparaging statement about Buddhism. Then I think the Pope and his office, they made some clarification. Look, we are sorry if we hurt your sentiments. Then the Pope went to Sri Lanka, but a lot of reaction. in Sanatana Dharma. Brahmana Maharshi is a very wonderful representative of the entire Sanatana Dharma, though his special focus is on Atma Vichara, Tvampada Pradhana Vichara, but he respects the whole philosophy, traditions, customs, rituals, value system. So Maharshi Ramana is extremely accommodative with a great broad-minded outlook. Sarvaihi janaihi jagataha nidanam ahavaha nidanam cha prabhuhu vachya. They accept. References to Astika darshans. So Astika again has two meanings. One is those who accept God. But in certain philosophical circles, Astika means those who accept Veda. Because there are some people who believe in Vedas but not in God. And then there are religions in this world, like Christianity. They believe in God but not in Vedas. So believing God, believing in Veda are two different things. Therefore, Astika can mean either of these. Astika in this sense, Astika in that sense. And in the present context, I am talking of belief in God. Those systems of the universe, of this world, which believe in God, they talk about God as the creator. Then how he created, again there are variations. Apara Shakti, all of them accept God as the creator of the world, creator of the individual souls, and they look at God as having infinite power. Sarva Shakta. But then what Maharshi adds, brings into this picture is, in this scenario, Chitre Atra, in this scenario, the deeper truth is, Lokyam, what is seen, Vilokita, one who sees, and a scenario could be on a canvas. You are in an art exhibition. You see a drawing, a painting, oil painting, acrylic painting, and there are hills, there are rivers, the sun rising, there are birds flying in the sky. You are the Vilokita, you see. The drawing is the Vilokya or Lokya, what is seen. And there is the canvas, Pataha. A light is burning, making it all visible. Prakasha. And Maharshi says, all of these are one truth, Ekaha. Atra Chitre, Lokyancha, Vilokitacha, Prakashascha, Patascha, Ete Sarve, all these, Ekaha, Abhavat. In other words, he says, outwardly, on the surface, there is plurality. At the depth, there is Advaitam. This is his enunciation of Advaita Tattva. In this way, he prepares the ground and slowly takes us towards the great sadhana. Who am I? Inquiry. In the next verse also, he will talk about Jiva, Jagat and Paratma. Jiva is the individual soul, Jagat is the grand stage, as I called it, the universe. Paratma is Paramatma, Ishvara, the ruler. The ruler, the ruled, and the setting where this whole play goes on. He refers to that again and then says, if the ego dies, the entire perception changes. The way you see the so-called God, the so-called Jagat, so-called yourself, all of them undergo an unbelievable transformation. That he will say in a very picturesque manner in the 4th shloka. We will see it in the next class. Om Shanti. Shanti.